You're experiencing the Authentic Chaos Podcast, an exploration into our inner selves and stories of self-discovery. I'm your host, Vahagan Yernosian. Today, I want to talk about matters of identity. This is a common theme of the podcast because I truly believe in order to understand our authentic chaos, we need to really understand what makes up our identity. In season 1, I talked about collective narratives, these stories of society that help society function and give us certain language and tools to help identify with others easily, like religion, nationality, economic systems. And these all have an important part in what shapes our identity today, or at least our identity growing up. And I'll post a link to that episode in the description for those who haven't heard it yet. One of the most important identities in our adult lives that we take is our occupation. What is the first question that you're asked when you're a little kid, especially by adults? What do you want to be when you grow up? We ask children as soon as they really start to understand their identity and are able to communicate. We ask them, how do they tie their identity to a potential occupation? What do you want to be when you grow up? It seems like a very simple question, but in it is one of the most important verbs in all of language, to be. It is a verb of existence. It is a verb of identity. When we say, I am an occupation, I am an engineer, I am a salesperson, I am a writer, I am etc., we are building in our mind this link between our identity and an occupation. And this works well for us for the most part. We don't even notice it. It becomes second nature. A lot of us start to become very good at our jobs and start to identify with our jobs. It makes sense. We spend 40 plus hours a week working. So why not have something like that be tied to our identity? Why not have our occupation be who we are? It's easy. Everyone does it. Everyone talks about their identity in terms of their occupation anyway. A lot of your waking days, you're working. So why not? Well, the problem with tying your identity to something that is external, like a job, is what happens when you lose that job? What happens to your identity? I've been thinking about this a lot lately because a lot of tech companies have been laying off workers like left and right. And I have unfortunately been one of those workers that got laid off. And it was very sudden and it was a bit of a shock. But I reflected on how my layoff this time impacted me versus previous times when when my career was suddenly shifted. As a bit of a dive into my own personal story, my own personal vulnerability, about 8 years ago or so, I was in grad school for a PhD program in a field in chemical engineering, and I failed my candidacy exam. And it was a huge shock to me. It was not something that I expected would ever happen. And I felt betrayed by my advisors. I felt lost. I felt confused. The entire identity that I had for myself. I had for myself this identity of a scientist, that I was going to go into science. And this was going to be a big part of who I was. It was a big part of who I was. But I hit this roadblock where I no longer could reach my dream, reach my vision, reach who I was. And I embarked on a 6-month kind of a spiral into depression over the period of time of trying to like recover my PhD, trying to fight back, to ultimately accepting that I was no longer going down this path and I had to figure out who I was and fast. And that feeling was truly terrifying to me. That depression led me to like neglect a lot of my health. I was not eating well. I felt I was very ungrounded and just terrified and scared of what I would be and whether or not I would have to go back to my home and start fresh. Ultimately, I chose to run away and run to Seattle and start a whole new career and just leave that whole life behind me. And the reason I bring up this story is that this is a contrast to how I felt this week when I found out that I was laid off. It came suddenly. I didn't expect it. We were told that the entire organization was safe and I did good work. But sometimes these things happen. And once the shock fades, honestly, it hasn't been that big of an issue for me. I know who I am and I understand myself enough that losing my job it doesn't shake me. I know that it'll be okay, that I will be okay. And granted, there's some privilege that comes with this, that brought me to this point. I have the privilege of having faced a situation like this in the past and having lived through it. The ability to see that there is a tomorrow and that tomorrow will be brighter than the darkness you're going through today is immensely powerful and immensely useful in building your context that you will be all right. You will be all right. Because your job is external. It is not who you are. It is what you do, but not who you are. You are not your job. I want you to repeat this. Look in the mirror and say this to yourself. I am not my job. I am a beautiful person full of joy and love and maybe some ambition, but also chaos and complexity and and some things that I don't like about and some things that I'm not thrilled about lately, like, oh, maybe I eat too many sweets or like maybe I'm a little lazy sometimes, but that's still me. Those are all me. But my job isn't me. My job is just what I do. Just what I do. I would still be me doing anything else. And that's kind of the point of this episode. That you are you. You are not your job. I felt like I needed to put out this voice because I've noticed a lot of pain and a lot of strain and a lot of angst among people I know and don't know. All throughout LinkedIn, I've seen so many of these posts about how devastated people are for being laid off, about how their jobs were such important parts of their lives. And maybe some of that is embellishment in order to make themselves look good in LinkedIn. But I do honestly believe that some of these people are being truthful, that these jobs were a big part of their lives. And if you want your job to be a big part of your life, that's fine. That's great. But don't let it consume your life. Please, please. Your other relationships in your life deserve better than that. You have loved ones likely in your life. The relationships you have with them, they are real. They are vital. They are the things you're going to remember for the rest of your life. You won't necessarily remember like what promotions you got or when or what achievements you got at work, but you will remember your loved ones and how you've made these connections with them and what lives you've touched, what things you've experienced with your loved ones. These are the things that matter. These are what we're bringing with us. That's the memory. And that those are part of who we are and help us grow into what we want to be. But I want to talk a little bit more about this angst that I'm seeing. Some of my friends have mourned my loss, the loss of my job, more than I've mourned the loss of my job. And to them, I say, maybe this is an opportunity to reflect on the role of your job in your life, and specifically the role of your job on who you are. Sometimes we're not aware of the impacts, of the effect, of the amount of our identity space in our minds that our jobs take up. I used to be the kind of guy that would constantly think about work. I loved problem solving. I would constantly think about issues at work, problems to be solved, solutions to those problems. And it was great. It got me really excited. It really fed my ego. But doing that, I was distracted. I was not being present in hanging out with friends, in hanging out with loved ones. I wasn't developing the relationships around me, and I wasn't developing myself. I was not present in my own life. I was present in work, and I was constantly in work. So to my friends who have the financial means to survive a layoff, at least temporarily, at least until you get another job, because there will always be another opportunity. But to you, I say, take a step back, reflect on this relationship you have with work, and maybe start to draw boundaries with this relationship. Just like any other relationship, your relationship with work deserves strong boundaries. You deserve your space when you are no longer at work. You deserve to be present in the moment, present in the relationships you're nourishing, present in yourself. You deserve better than to be focusing on work when you're trying to nourish your soul. Your partner deserves better than that. Your family deserves better than that. Your friends deserve better than that. Work seems like such an important part of our lives because it provides us with money, and money is an important part for getting a lot of our needs met. But there's a point where sometimes those needs aren't really needs, but are more of wants. And sometimes those wants, and sometimes we're really focused on the acquisition of the money rather than fulfilling anything or what that money would do for us. And sometimes we just like to give in. Like I said, it's a bit of an ego trip to just work on things that you like to do and are good at. It's satisfying. I get it. But we're trying to starve our egos a little bit in 2023. 2023 is the year to starve your ego to feed your soul. It's the year to have this revolution of authenticity. It's the year to say, maybe I want to take this trajectory that we've been having. Oh, sorry, Sandra. I want to take this trajectory that we've been having as a culture and as a generation of saying, like, I don't need to work. I don't want to work all the time. And I want you to say, instead of thinking about, I want to retire early or I want to think about what my exit plan is from work, I want you to treat your exit plan. I want you to have your exit plan now. I want you to live your life. I want you to work when you need to work, but then when you're out of work, I don't want you to focus on it. I want you to carve out a space in your mind that used to be taken up by your job and give it to yourself. Use that time to nourish yourself. Use that time to reflect. Maybe sit and reflect on thoughts you've had or situations you've had in the past. Maybe read and understand a little bit more about yourself. Maybe deepen a relationship with someone and notice how that relationship impacts you. Maybe let yourself feel. We like so often we get frustrated at work and we get so many emotions and we want to cry or we want to just yell or we just feel something we want to feel. So feel. Take that and feel it. Explore it. What is it? You might learn something about yourself. You probably will learn something about yourself. And that journey of really learning about yourself and understanding, it's such an important part of your journey. Me recognizing that work was taking up a significant portion of my mind was a crucial first step for me to even understand my chaos, even understand that I had a chaos and that it was worth pursuing. Only through awareness. I've mentioned this a couple times. I've mentioned this in the moderation episode and ones prior, but through awareness, we can identify problems. And through awareness, we can affect change. We can change ourselves. But we first have to know, we have to be aware, we have to feel that this is taking up too much space. This is taking up too much of me. You are not your job. You getting fired or laid off is not the same as you losing your health or losing your life. It's not the same as you losing your mind, as of breaking your heart. It is external. It is the surface, and you will get past it because it is not you. It is not a reflection on you. You are so much more than that. I want you to see that because you deserve it. And your loved ones deserve it. And once you feel that, and once you start to explore that, then you can give yourself permission to really start to explore yourself more. And maybe take that time that you would have given to your job outside of your job, like when if you're thinking about problems at work outside of work, instead of doing that, focus on some things about yourself. Reflect on yourself. Carve that space back for you. Build that boundary in your mind. And over time, you will start to see yourself and recognize yourself and feel yourself and respect your authentic chaos. And I think this is such an important step to really understanding who you are, accepting who we are, and ultimately loving who we are. Going into February, I have many exciting episodes planned on love and dating, including some of my own reflections on self-love, and that I'm very excited to share with you. But thank you so much for listening to my musings on jobs and my layoff. As always, embrace your chaos with kindness.